Hi, and welcome to A Sense of Wellness podcast, inspiring and empowering a healthier you. I'm your host, Susan Greeley, and I'll be diving deeper into the 4 pillars of wellness: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. Today's episode is all about food and mood, and we have something special prepared for you. So stay tuned until the end of this episode for a chance to win a copy of Dr. Naidoo's book, This Is Your Brain on Food. I'm very excited to have Dr. Naidoo with me today to tackle a topic that affects everyone, and I mean everyone. That is how our diet affects our mental health and well-being. So Dr. Naidoo is the author of the book I just mentioned called This Is Your Brain on Food. She draws on cutting-edge research to explain the many ways in which food contributes to our mental health and how a healthy diet can help both treat and prevent a wide range of psychological and cognitive health issues. First, I want to give a little bit more background about my guest, Dr. Naidoo. So she founded and directs the first hospital-based nutritional psychiatry service in the United States. She's the director of the Nutritional and Lifestyle Psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston and serves on the faculty at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Naidoo has been deemed the world's first triple threat in the world of food and medicine by Michelin-starred chef David Bouley. That's because Dr. Naidoo is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, a professional chef, and a trained nutrition specialist. So we get it all in one with Dr. Naidoo. And on that note, I want to say thank you very much for joining me today, Dr. Naidoo.
Thanks so much, Susan. Thanks for having me.
Yes, well, I'm excited to talk with you again. It's been a few months since we did a webinar together all about this topic on gut health and mental health. Yeah, and here we are just so many more months into this pandemic, and it's really taking a toll, right?
It really is, and I'm hearing that from everyone.
Exactly. So I'll take a step back first because I think it's fascinating that you have this combination in the medical and food world. So if you don't mind, give us a little bit about your own personal story. How did you end up combining psychiatry with your work in food?
Sure. Thanks, Susan, for asking. I think it really goes back to my childhood. I was from a very large South Asian family, and we were always surrounded by family meals, love nutrition, nurturance, sort of extended family spending time together on the weekends. And I also had a family that happened to have a lot of allopathic physicians and a few Ayurvedic practitioners. And there was just this natural discussion around health science, nutrition, but there's always joy in food. And I think I carried that with me. I mean, my grandfather taught me meditation. There was always sort of talk about mindfulness and yoga in the home and practice of that. So when I began to study later on, I felt that I brought much of that holistic and integrated aspect to my practice. And I began to really think more deeply when I learned more about medications, because I felt a certain responsibility that if medications had serious side effects, that people needed more than one option, more than one tool in their toolkit, so to speak, to actually feel emotionally better. And that's when nutrition really filled that gap. And I explored ways to learn more and to understand more, because when you know that certain medications cause such devastating side effects, you want to be able to understand how someone's eating, are they exercising. The model of care that I use is holistic, integrated, and functional. So it really brings a more complete way to thinking about mental well-being. And, my detour to culinary school was really because in my early days of studying, I couldn't afford cable television, and I would watch Julia Child on the PBS network. And she really was such a riot and so much fun. But I learned so much about cooking with confidence from her. And what I realized as I read up more about her life, that she and her culinary career was her second career. I decided, if she could go to culinary school, why not me? And I decided that I would take myself to culinary school. But I feel very fortunate that those areas of what I studied, what I love to do, I went ahead and studied, came together in this way in nutritional psychiatry, because I feel right now, especially, we just need that additional way that we can feel better. And food is within our grasp. It's the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, that we can all control, especially now. And that's how I came to do what I do. I wish I could say there was a grand plan, but there really wasn't. Um, it melded together over time, and my interests sort of overlapped.
No, it did melt together in the most natural way. And I have to say, we were both
Yes.
influenced by Julia Child. Wasn't
Yes.
that right? So she had such a great impact on people. And I didn't know that about you. I love hearing that. And then, just take it to the present day where we see the rates of anxiety and depression skyrocketing.
Mhm.
We all need to take a step back. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, I think people took a step back and reached for more comfort foods. They were ordering maybe more
Yeah.
takeout, snacking more, alcohol intake increased. What would you say, or can you tell us what's the most important thing to focus on right now in individuals' diets to support mental health?
Absolutely. It unfortunately doesn't come down to just one ingredient. I'd like to say to people, think about that this has been a very hard year. It's been difficult, and we need to sort of step back from the things that we needed to perhaps eat or do to get ourselves through. And now that we're a year later, it really is time to step back from the foods that people call comfort foods, which actually cause the brain immense discomfort because of the actions. And I think that when we understand that, people realize that they just need to start replacing those, whether it's snacks or processed foods or junk foods or fast foods, with maybe some healthier options. And can you start with one thing in your diet today that you feel went awry during COVID? And can you try to change that one thing? Maybe for someone, it's ordering takeout every day from a fast food restaurant. Or maybe for someone else, they haven't been eating as many salads. Or they've not been cooking vegetables to add to their meals. Whatever habit it could be, increasing your fiber is probably one of the most important things. So think about whether you can do that by adding in, plant foods, vegetables, fruit, beans, nuts, seeds, legumes, healthy whole grains into your diet today. And so I would start there. Start with one thing that you wish you could change, and then add in those veggies and fiber-rich foods.
It's very important to have something tangible to grasp onto because I know a lot of people get overwhelmed with there's a lot of all or nothing thinking and taking it back to
Yeah.
moderation and finding one tangible aspect of their daily diet. I think that's really the key. So you just mentioned fiber. As far as others, let's broaden it a bit. Are there other two things: science-backed anxiety triggers food-wise, and then on the
Mhm.
flip side, what are 3 to 5 daily foods that people can eat that are going to counteract that?
Absolutely. So it's very important, and I break this down in my book. There are lists at the end of each chapter about foods to avoid, which fortunately are shorter than the foods to embrace, which usually includes many more foods. But
Thankfully.
foods to avoid for anxiety, are the added and refined sugars, which actually worsen anxiety. So added refined sugars in the processed foods and junk foods, as well as all the other stabilizers, food dyes, colorants, preservatives that actually worsen gut health and can disrupt your mental health. Important to stay away from those. And then, trans fats have been associated with behavioral aggression. So important to understand where to get some healthy fats from. Processed vegetable oils are very highly inflammatory and can set yourself up for really inflammation in the gut, which is really the start of the dysbiosis, and then can lead to really an upsetting of your mental and emotional health. And artificial sweetness is another one that you don't realize you may be trying to come off a high sugar diet. You get something called sugar free or labeled sugar free, but it might contain an artificial sweetener that is worsening your anxiety. So it's just important to pay attention to the ingredients in your food, and to know what to be careful of if you have anxiety.
hmm hmm I think it's very important to talk about this gut and brain connection, and that's the premise of the book. So let's switch gears to that, really supporting our gut health. Can you give our listeners like the priorities on supporting a good gut microbiome?
Sure. So some of the priorities could do come back to eating fiber because what the microbes in the gut like to eat is fiber. And by taking care of those microbes that live in the gut, we are helping them do their job to support our immunity, our hormone health, our emotional health, to do many, many things. So fiber is a really good starting point. And including that, it turns out that 1 in 10 Americans eat enough vegetables in their diet. So, that's definitely something that we can improve. And, along with fiber go things like the prebiotic rich foods and probiotic foods. And prebiotic foods are things like onions, asparagus, bananas, oats, and many, many more. They're long listed in my book, but adding these foods to your diet are really helpful because, again, they bring back nutrition to the gut and feed those microbes. You can get probiotics from a supplement, and I think there is a place for supplements, but you can also get it from fermented foods like kimchi, kefir, kombucha, miso, and you also have dairy and non-dairy yogurts now. That's sheep's milk yogurts as well that have live active probiotics. So that's another good option for you. I just suggest getting the plain ones so that you don't have the added sugars from the fruited kind. So, fiber, which again, you can get from the things we mentioned, prebiotics and probiotic foods are great ways to start. And then building in your leafy greens, because the basis of a salad, eat the rainbow. There's now a lot of evidence for the actual phytonutrients and what they do for the gut. The fact that leafy greens provide folate, very important for our brain. Lower levels are associated with depression. So, adding in those leafy greens becomes important, and adding in colors adds to the biodiversity of the meal that we're eating. And that's associated with better and improved gut health. So, eat the color of the rainbows, challenge yourself to have as many different veggies in a day or in a week. And, enjoy the color because the color brings back rich phytonutrients, which are both anti-inflammatory, great for your gut and your brain, but also rich in these plant polyphenols, which help us
tremendously. And I talk about it on a daily basis myself with people. It's really a simple message
Right.
to eat the rainbow, and it's the most effective. So you have to remove the refined, I'll just paraphrase, remove,
Yeah.
right? The refined added sugars and even artificial sweeteners, the bad fats, the processed foods. And then on the flip side, you add good fats, fiber, phytonutrients. That's my little tagline. And
Right.
it works, right? It's a simple thing to remember. And so let's say you got into a bad place during COVID, as many people did. And even if you have a quote unquote healthy diet normally, or think you still do, but you are eating too many sweets per se, or drinking too much alcohol, and you start to really make these daily changes on cleaning up your diet, but you've been feeling a lot of anxiety or depression, whatever it is, not so well mentally, how long does it take to feel better? What can people
And
expect?
sure. So that is a little bit difficult because each of our gut microbiome is like a thumbprint. So we all respond slightly differently. But in my clinical experience, people can start to feel slightly better, lighter, less brain fog a week later, just by making these adjustments. But they have to be consistent. It's not an overnight plan. They have to really be moving in the same direction towards a healthier diet from the one that they're eating. And usually, appropriate gut healing can take about 3 weeks to a month. It varies in most people, but, and in others, it can take much longer. So that's why I say it's not as exact as we would like it to be. But what I can say, Susan, is that when you're making those healthy habit changes and you're sticking to them, you are just naturally going to start to feel better. And then you're going to want to do more of it and building more habits. So, I would just encourage people to make a change that they feel they can sustain and then build on those healthy habits.
Right. And then, of course, one thing leads to another, that healthy diet, perhaps you're sleeping better, and then you're more likely to exercise. So it really is all tied together. And I think that that's the most important thing for people, just to start with some of these, day by day, making one day good and then the next day to follow that, and then they slowly feel better. And so it's a self-perpetuating cycle. So can you share with us some of your favorite daily healthy dishes? And I know I'm going to go ahead and prompt you because I know you incorporate a lot of spices, in particular herbs and spices, and I would love to hear more about that.
Sure. So I've always loved spices from my childhood, and because I used to sort of spend a lot of time with my grandmother, and part of it was that she was not only an excellent cook, she really taught me about spices and how to use them, and I learned over time the immense health benefits and really brain benefits that many of them have. So, a simple vegetable dish. I like to talk about one sheet meals for busy families because you can put your protein, your mixed veggies, season it and bake this in the oven and actually have a really complete meal. And if you're single or you're smaller family, you can have a couple of meals from that. You can have leftovers. But the thing that can change up that meal every single day or every week to make a difference is you can go in the direction of a Mexican dish and use Mexican spices. You can go in the direction of more an Asian flavored dish or an Italian. What's the commonality? There's the way that you use spices. I tend to favor turmeric because it just has so many health benefits and it's sort of a superpower spice because the curcumin is effective. And, I always say add a pinch of black pepper because that makes it much more bioavailable. So that's one of my go-tos because it really helps in depression. It helps anxiety. It's been shown to help in cognition. So it's really a super spice. And I would say the thing that you can add or do differently in your diet is add in spices of different kinds. They last a while. You don't need much to flavor up your food. They're calorie-free, sugar-free, salt-free. That's why I suggest, don't buy blends, just buy the actual spice, and use those to make your meals more interesting and get the powerful benefits on your brain.
So important to spice up your food, both for taste.
Right.
I mean, we eat based on taste, and then having and knowing these added benefits, I think helps people also make the choices to buy them. So that takes me to the next point, which is if you don't have the foods on hand, it's not going to happen. So as far as advising people where and how to get started, if they're intimidated in the kitchen, and you talked about it, get in the kitchen, get cooking. Can you give listeners some quick and easy tips on just, what's one healthy recipe that you can do really quickly? Let's say you don't even cook and you're more of like really
Right.
good at assembling or following a recipe.
Sure. So I have a few suggestions. One is start building your own salad. Get a bunch of leafy greens. The greener the better. Get different colored, say, sweet peppers, carrots, cucumbers, celery, and all you have to do is break these up, or just not too much prep, but chop them up and add them to your salad. Slice up the peppers and add those in. Think about the colors. So that's a quick, easy go-to. Many of us think, oh, well, we have to go to an outlet or a store and buy, a salad for $15. You can do it for very little money and very many days just by buying the fresh ingredients. So I like to teach people that because it's full of fiber, all the nutrients we talked about, and good for you. But another easy one is learn a sheet pan meal. So, take some chicken breasts and think about veggies that you like. Maybe it's broccoli and cauliflower. Add, avocado oil, salt, pepper, maybe paprika, or maybe some paprika and turmeric and a pinch of black pepper. Or maybe you want to go with cumin and some Mexican oregano. And, a drizzle of olive oil and bake it in the oven. And you have now, if you're plant-based, you can substitute that with a healthy organic tofu that you bake in the oven. You don't have to cook chicken. If you like seafood, you can make that with salmon. Bake it in the oven, and you have an easy sheet pan meal ready, as well as easy cleanup. Because I always suggest you use a sheet of parchment paper on your half sheet pan, and that really helps you with your cleanup. So that's another one. The third, I like to speak to people about meal prep. So I think that having things prepped in the fridge for the whole family or even just for yourself is just very important, because if you open the fridge and what you see are lots of unhealthy snacks in the fridge, and that's what everyone in the family is going to reach for. But if you have some cut up celery, a bowl of hummus, if you have a nut butter or a nut seed butter, that the kids or yourself can dip some celery sticks into, that's an easy go-to choice right there. But in addition to prepping snacks, have some things ready for breakfast. Have your little mini frittatas baked up using a cupcake pan. Freeze some of them so that, you just store it overnight in the fridge and have something for breakfast the next day. Make some chia pudding ahead. And, that's something that can be made ahead and can be a breakfast that the whole family has. But some people have the chia pudding as a snack. They add on some blueberries and nuts and seeds, and they have that as a snack. So the more that you plan or know and are mindful about the food that you have in the fridge and in your fridge, the less you are going to be unprepared and reaching for those unhealthy options from your cupboard or from the pantry that are shelf stable and more of a processed food that is less healthy for you.
Oh, it's just so true. I can attest to that. In other words, if you do the best planning in the world, that's fine. If you don't actually purchase and then prepare the foods, though, it still doesn't happen. So that's my added advice there is plan, purchase, and prepare the foods. So
don't just have it sitting in the fridge.
Exactly.
Because all that celery bunched up, no one's going to actually eat it. But if it's washed and cut up into 2 celery sticks, someone's gonna make those.
Exactly. Put the time in, to do that.
Exactly.
Right. And instead of a list or even, writing your notes on the weekend and not actually buying the food. So all those steps are extremely important, and you support yourself. We're giving you the tools, giving listeners the tools. And really that's the point, to simplify it. I think food and nutrition and healthy eating, it doesn't have to be difficult or complicated. And so I love how just in hearing you talk about those quick and easy meals, the frittatas, the chia pudding. I mean, chia pudding is literally 3 ingredients, and
exactly,
and it can be a
sometimes
dessert,
even less.
Less.
It can be a dessert, yeah.
And I think that that's important for people to hear, is that dessert doesn't have to be off limits, but when we are both essentially advising to really limit or completely eliminate the added sugars, having tasty options is so important.
If people are trying to make healthy changes, but they're choosing foods that are not tasty, they just won't sustain the habit. So I really feel that's important. And, I put chia seeds and coconut milk in my chia pudding. Then I add a drop of honey if I want it sweet, or I add fruit on top, or cinnamon and nuts, and that sweetens it. So you don't have to do as much as we sometimes think to make a healthy option for your breakfast or frankly for your brain.
Right. And as you're saying that, I can taste it, and it makes us happy. I think we all need to.
Exactly. It gives us joy. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That was one of the first things you said, was finding joy in your food. And you grew up that way. And I did as well. And I love to help people find that. And these days, if the goal
is hard, yeah.
Right. Finding that daily joy or bliss in our food, and not in an unhealthy way. That's the key there.
That's the key. Exactly.
That's really the key. Well, your book is chock full of so much, not just the science, but really the practical side. And that's what I want listeners to know. And so readable, I'm a big fan of your book. And
thank you.
Yeah, I would love for you to share. Do you have any favorites that you make yourself?
Sure. Absolutely. So you've heard about my chia pudding. I think I talk about it everywhere. But I also I love to have my patients have options, and this is why I say it. Some individuals are plant-based, some people are more seafood-based, and some people want a baked piece of chicken with their dinner. So I like to write recipes and practice, and one of my favorites is cauliflower steak, and I use the paprika, the salt, pepper, the turmeric, a little bit of avocado oil is the simplest, and then I can always add spices to that. And I bake these cauliflower steaks in the oven, and I can do several at a time. But if you don't want that, you can do the same recipe with a piece of salmon, or you can do the same exact recipe for a chicken breast. So these I think make it easier for people to have options and not be confused about using spices and integrating things. I also love to make dal, because it's nutritious. It offers, you can add vegetables to it. You can make it more interesting. And I also think that having a few pieces of equipment as you get cooking could help you. Like the Instant Pot is super helpful if you eat beans and legumes. You can make a stew. You can do a beef stew in that. You can do a lot of different things right in that Instant Pot. So the reason I mention that is often people are intimidated by legumes and lentils because they think, well, how am I going to make it? And, how am I going to boil these and things like that? Well, the things like an Instant Pot make it easier for you to get to those healthier habits. And so I like pressure cooking my yellow lentils in my Instant Pot, and then I have them ready and actually freeze half cup or more containers of the softened lentils. And then I use them to make dal with different flavors and different spices. I add vegetables to it. I have family members who add meat to it. People can make that dal very interesting based on that, the individual recipe. I like to add spinach to mine because that's just a great added nutrient there as well.
Mm-hmm. The versatility is amazing, isn't it? And once you
it is, you can make it so different.
Right.
It's about learning a few simple things and taking them, especially if you're learning. You were talking about people who maybe in this pandemic sort of really having to use their kitchens more. Well, start simple. No one is expecting you to make souffle. Learn a lentil dish or a baked salmon dish that you can, practice and do for your family or for yourself, and just change out the spices to make it more interesting for yourself.
It's so important, and take it from there. And everybody does have different taste preferences and just experimenting, but getting the basics down without that intimidation factor. Thank you. I mean, that's right. What we're talking about is to have it be give people options and the quick and easy tools. So I'm a huge fan of the beans, the legumes as well.
Absolutely.
Because they take on so many different flavors. And just have fun in the kitchen. That's what I encourage people to do on a daily basis, right?
Absolutely. Have fun. And it's, don't feel intimidated. I had someone say to me, I know you talk about avocados all the time. And it was quite an unexpected comment. And that's why I shared with you. You talk about healthy fats from avocados all the time, Dr. Naidoo, but I don't know what to do with an avocado. And that's such an important question. How can I assume that if I've talked about an avocado, you're going to know what to do with it? And so, just a demo of how people often have tasted guacamole, but if they haven't worked with an avocado, they may not know how to cut it or what to do with it. And yet you can make avocado toast. You can have sliced avocado on your salad. You can use avocado in certain desserts. You can do so much with it, but it starts with understanding how. So encouraging people to ask you questions like, maybe I don't know how to make celery sticks. That's something you can easily learn. So you don't feel intimidated by the suggestions people are making.
Right. And take the one thing that's extremely relevant. Believe it or not, that's come up in my cooking classes and some nutrition education and different courses that I've taught many times. An avocado alone, this simple little fruit, intimidates people. So thank you for mentioning
absolutely.
that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I could talk about food and mood all day because I think the most important thing is that people understand that connection, number one. And we know this, you and I know the statistics right now of the depression and anxiety since the pandemic. And so what I want to do is encourage our listeners to get back to the kitchen, to make some healthy, simple foods every day, and to get your book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I ask all of my guests is, can you give me one thing that you're grateful for today, Dr. Naidoo?
Absolutely. So I've got to tell you, Susan, I had a very busy, I would call it a bit of a rough day yesterday. My day ended really late and I went to bed super tired. But when I woke up this morning, I woke up to the most absolutely beautiful sunrise. I couldn't even capture it. I tried desperately to get several photographs. There were just so many colors. And, it was just a reminder of how beautiful things are and that you can have a rough day and be so busy and be exhausted, but you wake up and it's a whole other day. So it was just a reminder for me, just takes me back to some spiritual sense of self and my sort of core spirituality and what I feel. And it was a good reminder. So I was very grateful for that.
That's beautiful. I love hearing that. And it's those simple things, the color of a sunrise, the color of the food we eat.
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
that. It's
But
true.
Susan, I also I wanted to thank you for supporting my book, and I also wanted to tell your listeners that they can follow me on Instagram, which is at DRUMANAIDOO. And also, we write a newsletter and blogs in an updated way on my website if they wanted to subscribe and check me out there. And that's umanaidoomd.com. So we try our best to put out, updated research, new information, and helpful tips for people and recipes.
Right, that ongoing support. Thank you for that as well. I would love for listeners to connect with you, and I would love to have you back, of course, again at some
Of
point in
course,
the future and continue the conversation.
anytime.
Yes, great.
I'd
Well,
love
thank
that.
you again for joining me. And I wish everybody a very happy spring. We have made it to some brighter, warmer days. And thank you again for joining me. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you for taking the time to join me and listen to this episode. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're giving away several copies of Dr. Naidoo's book, This Is Your Brain on Food. To review the rules and enter the giveaway, simply click the link in the description of this episode, and good luck. Listeners can find more information and also subscribe to the Sense of Wellness podcast at www.ccphp.net/SENS/podcast. This show is brought to you by Castle Connolly Private Health Partners, a concierge medicine organization that partners with exceptional physicians to deliver an unrivaled healthcare experience while also empowering our members to achieve their optimal well-being. Be sure to listen in next time to the Sense of Wellness podcast, and remember, simple daily habits matter most.